Abigail stood by the living room window, gazing out at the snow-covered lawn. The twinkling Christmas lights cast a warm glow inside, contrasting with the cold, dark night outside. She adjusted the ornaments on the tree, ensuring everything was perfect for the family gathering. The aroma of freshly baked cookies wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of pine. It was supposed to be a night filled with love and joy, celebrating 50 years of marriage. James entered the room, his face etched with an unusual tension. Abigail turned, her smile faltering as she noticed his expression. He hesitated, then took a deep breath, his eyes avoiding hers. "Abigail," he began, his voice strained. "We need to talk." Confused, she set down the delicate glass ornament she was holding and walked toward him. "What is it, James? What's wrong?" He looked down, fidgeting with his wedding ring. "I've been seeing someone else," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The room seemed to spin around her. "What? Who?" she managed to ask, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's Daisy," he said, finally meeting her eyes. "She's 19 and I'm leaving you to be with her." The words hit her like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of her. Abigail stared at him, unable to process what he had just said. 19? She repeated, incredulous. "James, she's just a child." James shook his head, a mixture of guilt and determination in his eyes.
"I'm sorry, Abigail.
I need something different, something new. Daisy gives me that." Tears welled up in Abigail's eyes as she took a step back, the pain cutting deep. "After 50 years? On Christmas Eve." Her voice broke, filled with betrayal and disbelief. James looked away, unable to face her devastation. "I didn't want it to be like this, but I can't stay. I need to be honest with you and with myself." The Christmas lights blurred through her tears as she watched him walk out of the door. The warmth of the room turned cold as the reality of his departure set in. Abigail felt a chasm open inside her, swallowing the love and stability she had known for so long. She sank onto the couch, the festive decorations around her now a painful reminder of the life that was slipping away. The sound of the front door closing echoed in her ears, final and unrelenting. For a moment, she sat in stunned silence, the weight of the revelation pressing down on her. Then, a quiet strength began to rise within her. She wiped her tears, her mind racing with memories and questions. How had she missed the signs? Why now? But even as the questions swirled, she knew she had to find a way to move forward. As the snow continued to fall outside, Abigail made a silent promise to herself. She would face this pain, she would confront the years of silent infidelity, and she would find a way to rebuild her life. This Christmas Eve would mark the end of one chapter, but it would also be the beginning of her journey towards self-discovery and renewal. Abigail sat in the now quiet living room, the soft glow of the Christmas lights a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. Her mind raced, replaying James's words over and over. The man she had shared 50 years with, the father of her children, had been unfaithful. The revelation of his affair with Daisy, a girl so young, felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She needed answers. Determined to find the truth, Abigail began to piece together the past. She reached for the family photo albums on the coffee table, flipping through pages filled with memories. Each photo, once a cherished moment, now felt tainted. She examined James's face in every picture, searching for signs she might have missed. There were moments when his smile seemed forced, his eyes distant. How long had he been unhappy? Abigail moved to his study, a room she rarely entered. It was here that she found the first clue, a drawer filled with receipts and letters, hidden beneath stacks of papers. The receipts were for dinners and gifts she had never received, from places she had never been. The letters, some old and yellowed, were from various women, expressing love and longing. Each one was a dagger to her heart, revealing a pattern of betrayal spanning years. One letter in particular caught her eye. It was from Daisy, filled with youthful exuberance and promises of a future together. Abigail's hands trembled as she read the words, the reality of James's double life crashing down on her. He had been unfaithful not just with Daisy, but with countless others throughout their marriage. The betrayal felt like a physical weight, pressing down on her chest. Abigail tried to breathe, but the pain was overwhelming. She thought of all the times she had trusted him implicitly, never questioning his late nights or unexplained absences. She had been a dutiful wife, supporting him through thick and thin, and this was her reward. As the hours passed, Abigail's emotions shifted from shock to anger. How dare he deceive her for so long? She had sacrificed so much for their family, believing in the sanctity of their marriage. The years of silent infidelity were like a poison, slowly eroding the foundation of their life together. She thought back to moments that now seemed filled with hidden meaning. The business trips that lasted too long, the whispered phone calls late at night. James had always brushed off her concerns, assuring her everything was fine, and she had believed him, wanting to trust the man she loved. But now the truth was undeniable. James had chosen to live a lie, and in doing so had robbed her of years she could never get back. Abigail felt a burning need for confrontation, to look him in the eye and demand to know why. But she knew that answers wouldn't change the past. What was done was done. With a heavy heart, Abigail put the letters back in the drawer. She walked through their home, seeing it with new eyes. Every room held memories of a life that was now shattered. But amid the ruins, she found a flicker of resolve. She couldn't change what James had done, but she could choose how to respond. The betrayal had wounded her deeply, but it would not define her. Abigail decided she would face this head-on, confronting not just James's infidelity, but the years of silent suffering she had endured. It was time to reclaim her life, to find her own path forward. The journey would be painful, but she knew she had the strength to begin. In the days following James's departure, Abigail felt as though she were navigating through a thick fog. The once bustling house, filled with laughter and warmth, now stood eerily silent. The absence of his presence was like a gaping wound, raw and aching. Every corner of the house reminded her of him, their shared jokes, whispered secrets, and the comfortable routine that had defined their lives for 50 years. The mornings were the hardest. Abigail would wake up, instinctively reaching out to the empty side of the bed, only to be met with cold sheets. The loneliness was suffocating. She had always loved the quiet moments of the early morning when they would sit together, sipping coffee and planning their day. Now the silence was unbearable. She tried to fill her time with chores and distractions, but everywhere she looked, there were reminders of James. His favorite chair by the fireplace, the worn flannel shirt he left draped over it, and the half-read book on his nightstand. Each item was a painful echo of a life that no longer existed. Abigail ventured out into the world, hoping to escape the oppressive solitude of her home. She went to the grocery store, walked through the park, and even visited a local cafe. But everywhere she went, she felt like an outsider looking in. Couples walked hand in hand, families laughed and played, and life moved on around her, indifferent to her pain. One afternoon, while sitting alone in the park, Abigail watched a young couple playing with their child. The scene was so reminiscent of her own past that it brought tears to her eyes. She remembered the days when she and James would bring their children to this very park, pushing them on swings and teaching them to ride bikes. Those were the days filled with promise and endless possibilities. As the days turned into weeks, Abigail's initial shock and disbelief gave way to a deep, simmering anger. She replayed every argument, every cold shoulder, and every time she had brushed off her own suspicions. How could he have done this to her? How could he have walked away from everything they had built together? In her darkest moments, Abigail questioned her own worth. Had she not been enough for him? Had she somehow driven him away? But deep down, she knew that the blame lay squarely on James. He had made the choice to betray her, and he had to live with the consequences. One evening, as she sat alone by the fireplace, Abigail made a decision. She could no longer allow herself to be consumed by grief and anger. James had taken enough from her, her trust, her stability, and her sense of self. She wouldn't let him take her future as well. She began to take small steps towards rebuilding her life. Abigail reconnected with old friends, started attending a local book club, and even signed up for a painting class. These activities brought moments of joy and distraction, little by little filling the void that James had left behind. Through the pain and the solitude, Abigail discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. She realized that her life was not defined by James's betrayal, but by her own resilience and capacity for growth. Each day was a small victory, a step towards reclaiming her identity and her happiness. And so, Abigail faced each new day with a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but she was determined to forge her own path. She would not be defined by the man who left her, but by the woman she was becoming. James stood in the middle of the unfamiliar living room, surrounded by boxes that held the remnants of his past life. The thrill of his decision had worn off, replaced by a nagging doubt that gnawed at the edges of his mind. Daisy flitted around the room, her youthful energy a stark contrast to his weariness. She was unpacking with an enthusiasm that felt almost foreign to him now. "James, can you help me with this?" Daisy called out, her voice bright and cheerful. She held up a garish lamp she had insisted on bringing from her old apartment. "Sure," he replied, forcing a smile as he took the lamp from her hands. He set it down on a side table, stepping back to assess how out of place it looked among his more refined furnishings. Daisy, oblivious to his discomfort, continued to chatter on about their plans. "I was thinking we could paint the walls a bright color, maybe something like teal or coral. It would make the place so much more lively, don't you think?" James nodded absently, his mind wandering. He remembered the quiet elegance of the home he had shared with Abigail, the subtle hues that spoke of years of mutual decisions and shared tastes. This new place felt like an assault on those memories. As the days turned into weeks, the initial excitement of their new life together began to fade. James found himself longing for the stability and understanding that had marked his years with Abigail. Daisy's youthful exuberance, which had once seemed so refreshing, now felt grating. Her inexperience and naivety were becoming more apparent, leading to small but persistent conflicts. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, Daisy brought up a topic that had been festering in the back of James's mind. "James, my friends from college are having a party this weekend. I'd love for us to go. It's going to be so much fun." James looked at her, feeling a pang of irritation. "Daisy, I don't think I'm up for a party with a bunch of teenagers. Can't we just have a quiet night at home?" Daisy's face fell, her eyes flashing with hurt. "But James, we never go out anymore. I thought this new life was supposed to be exciting and different. Aren't you happy?" He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "It's not that, Daisy. It's just, I'm not the same age as you. I don't have the same energy or interests. Sometimes I just want to relax and enjoy some peace." The tension between them grew as they struggled to find common ground. James felt increasingly out of place in Daisy's world, while she resented his reluctance to embrace her lifestyle. Their once passionate relationship began to show cracks, the honeymoon phase giving way to a harsh reality neither had anticipated. One night, after another argument, James found himself staring out the window, lost in thought. He missed the quiet companionship he had shared with Abigail, the unspoken understanding that came with decades of being together. With Daisy, everything felt tumultuous and uncertain. Daisy, sensing his distance, approached him cautiously. "James, are you having second thoughts?" He turned to look at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and confusion. "I don't know, Daisy. I thought I wanted something new, something different. But now, I'm not sure if I made the right choice." Tears welled up in Daisy's eyes. "I love you, James. I want this to work, but I need you to meet me halfway. We can't keep going like this." James felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He had promised her a life full of excitement and love, but he was realizing that he might not be able to fulfill that promise. "I know, Daisy. I need time to figure things out." As the days turned into months, James and Daisy's relationship continued to be tested. They faced the scrutiny of society, the whispers behind their backs, and the judgment of those who saw their age difference as a scandal. James struggled with the consequences of his impulsive decision, while Daisy grappled with the realities of being with a man much older than herself. Through it all, they tried to make their relationship work, but the honeymoon phase was well and truly over. The challenges they faced were not just external but deeply personal, forcing them to confront their own insecurities and doubts. For James, it was a time of reckoning, a period where he had to face the consequences of leaving behind a life built on decades of love and trust. For Daisy, it was a harsh lesson in the complexities of love and the difficulties of bridging a generational gap. Their journey together was only just beginning, and neither knew what the future held. But one thing was certain: the road ahead would be far more challenging than they had ever imagined. Abigail walked through the old town, the familiar cobblestone streets echoing with memories of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. The brisk autumn air nipped at her cheeks, and she pulled her scarf tighter around her neck. Each step took her deeper into a past she hadn't visited in years, a past she now realized held the key to understanding herself. She found herself outside the small cafe where she and James had their first date. The sign had changed, and the once quaint coffee shop was now a trendy bistro. Abigail stepped inside, greeted by the warm aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with baked goods. She chose a seat by the window, just as they had done all those years ago. As she sipped her coffee, she let her mind drift back to that day. She remembered the nervous excitement, the stolen glances, and the way James had made her laugh with his awkward jokes. It was a simpler time, filled with the promise of a future they would build together. The memory brought a bittersweet smile to her lips, a reminder of both the joy they once shared and the betrayal that now overshadowed it. Leaving the cafe, Abigail wandered to the park where they had spent countless afternoons with their children. The playground was filled with the laughter of children, and she could almost see her young family there, playing tag and pushing swings. She found the old oak tree where she and James had carved their initials, a symbol of their eternal love. The carving was weathered but still visible, a testament to the promises they had made. Abigail traced the letters with her fingers, feeling the rough bark under her touch. The love that seemed unbreakable had eroded over time, but standing there, she felt a surge of strength. Her journey took her next to the church where they had exchanged their vows. It was empty and quiet, the stained glass windows casting colorful patterns on the stone floor. She sat in a pew near the front, looking up at the altar where they had promised to love and cherish each other. The vows echoed in her mind, words that had meant everything to her. Abigail closed her eyes, letting the silence of the church wash over her. The betrayal still hurt deeply, but here, in this sacred space, she found a glimmer of peace. She prayed for the strength to forgive, not for James, but for herself. She needed to let go of the anger and pain to move forward. Walking out of the church, Abigail felt a lightness she hadn't experienced since James left. Her next stop was the house she had grown up in. The current owners had renovated it, but the essence of her childhood home remained. She knocked on the door, and an elderly woman answered, her face kind and welcoming. Abigail explained her connection to the house, and the woman graciously invited her in. As she walked through the familiar rooms, memories flooded back. She saw herself as a little girl, playing in the living room, helping her mother in the kitchen, and sitting by the fireplace with her family. Each room told a story, each memory a piece of the person she had become. The woman led her to the garden, a place Abigail had loved dearly. The flowers her mother had planted were still there, blooming brightly. She knelt down, touching the petals gently, feeling a connection to her roots. The garden had always been a place of solace, a sanctuary from the world. Here, Abigail felt grounded, reminded of the strength and resilience passed down from her mother. As the day drew to a close, Abigail made one last stop at the cemetery where her parents were buried. She knelt by their graves, tears streaming down her face. She spoke to them, sharing her pain and heartache, and also her determination to move forward. The sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the cemetery. Abigail stood up, feeling a sense of closure. She had faced her past, confronted the memories both joyous and painful, and found a renewed sense of purpose. Walking back through the town, Abigail felt different. She had rediscovered not just her past, but also herself. She was no longer defined by James's betrayal, but by her own strength and resilience. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but she knew she could face it with courage. The past had given her the tools she needed to build a new future, one where she was the author of her own story. Abigail sat in her living room, surrounded by a suffocating silence. The holiday season was in full swing, but for her, it was a time of profound loneliness. Just as she began to feel the weight of her solitude crushing down on her, the doorbell rang. Startled, she hurried to the door and found her best friend, Emma, standing there with a warm smile and a bottle of wine. "Emma," Abigail whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I wasn't expecting anyone." Emma pulled her into a tight hug. "I know, sweetie, but I couldn't let you be alone tonight. Come on, let's make the best of this evening." They settled in the living room, the wine glasses catching the soft light from the Christmas tree. As they sipped their wine, Emma listened intently to Abigail's story, offering words of comfort and understanding. The presence of her friend was a balm to Abigail's wounded heart, reminding her that she wasn't alone in her pain. Over the next few days, the support from friends and family poured in. Abigail's daughter, Chloe, called her from across the country. "Mom, I'm so sorry I can't be there right now, but I'm here for you always. You're so strong, and I know you'll get through this." Her son, Michael, who lived nearby, started visiting more often. He would bring groceries, help with chores, and sit with her, offering his quiet, steadfast support. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Michael said, "Mom, I know it feels like the end of the world right now, but it's not. You have so much life ahead of you, and we're all here to help you through this." Abigail's sister, Margaret, flew in from out of state to spend a week with her. The sisters hadn't been close in recent years, but this crisis brought them back together. They spent long hours reminiscing about their childhood, sharing laughter and tears. One night, Margaret held Abigail's hand and said, "You're not alone, Abby. We've got each other, and we'll get through this together." Her friends from the book club organized a small gathering at her home. They brought food, wine, and plenty of stories to share. The laughter and camaraderie filled the house with a warmth that had been missing for too long. They toasted to new beginnings and reminded Abigail of the community that surrounded her. Amid this outpouring of support, Abigail began to feel a flicker of hope. Her friend Grace invited her to join a yoga class, suggesting it might help her find some peace and clarity. At first, Abigail was hesitant, but she decided to give it a try. The gentle movements and meditative atmosphere of the class provided her with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. In the midst of these interactions, Abigail realized how much she had isolated herself over the years. She had been so focused on her marriage and her responsibilities that she had forgotten the importance of nurturing her friendships and family bonds. Now, these relationships were her lifeline. One afternoon, while having tea with Emma, Abigail confessed, "I never realized how much I needed you all. I've been so caught up in my own world, and now I see how much I've missed out on." Emma squeezed her hand. "That's what friends are for, Abby. We're here for you no matter what, and it's never too late to reconnect." Through the unwavering support of her loved ones, Abigail found the strength to start rebuilding her life. They encouraged her to pursue her interests, to find new passions and rediscover old ones. With their help, she enrolled in a cooking class, something she had always wanted to do but never found the time for. As the weeks turned into months, Abigail's home once again became a place of warmth and laughter. Family gatherings, game nights with friends, and spontaneous visits filled her days. She was no longer defined by her heartbreak but by the love and support that surrounded her. Abigail's journey was far from over, but she was no longer walking it alone. With the unwavering support of her friends and family, she felt a renewed sense of purpose and belonging. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she knew she had the strength and the love of those around her to face whatever came next. Abigail woke up one morning with a strange sense of clarity. The fog that had clouded her mind for weeks was beginning to lift, revealing the path forward. She decided it was time to focus on herself, to explore the passions and interests she had long neglected. This newfound determination brought a spark of excitement she hadn't felt in years. Her first step was signing up for a painting class at the local community center. Art had always been a quiet passion of hers, something she had enjoyed in her youth but abandoned as life grew busier. On the day of her first class, Abigail felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation. The classroom was filled with people of all ages, each with their own reasons for being there. The instructor, a kind and encouraging woman named Claire, welcomed Abigail warmly. "Art is a journey of self-expression," Claire said. "It's about discovering new parts of yourself with every brushstroke." Abigail found herself lost in the colors and textures of the paint. The act of creating something from nothing was both therapeutic and invigorating. She poured her emotions onto the canvas, finding solace in the swirls of color. With each class, she felt her confidence grow, not just in her art, but in herself. Her next venture was joining a hiking group. Abigail had always loved nature, the tranquility of the woods and the beauty of the changing seasons. The group met every Saturday morning, exploring different trails and parks. On her first hike, she was greeted by a group of friendly faces, all eager to share their love of the outdoors. The hikes were challenging, but the physical exertion felt good. The fresh air and the sound of leaves crunching underfoot were a welcome escape from her worries. With each step, Abigail felt herself growing stronger, both physically and mentally. The camaraderie of the group provided a sense of belonging, and she soon formed close bonds with her fellow hikers. One Saturday, after a particularly strenuous hike, the group gathered at a scenic overlook. The view was breathtaking, the landscape stretching out in a patchwork of greens and browns. As they sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Abigail realized how much she had missed these simple joys. In addition to her classes and hikes, Abigail began volunteering at a local animal shelter. She had always loved animals and found comfort in their unconditional affection. The shelter was bustling with activity, filled with the sounds of barking dogs and purring cats. Abigail quickly settled into her role, feeding and caring for the animals and helping with adoptions. One afternoon, while walking a rambunctious Labrador named Max, she struck up a conversation with another volunteer named Peter. He was kind and shared her love for animals. They bonded over their shared experiences and soon began working together regularly. Peter's companionship added a new dimension to her journey, bringing a sense of friendship and connection she had been missing. As the weeks passed, Abigail's days grew fuller and more vibrant. She found herself looking forward to each new adventure, whether it was painting, hiking, or spending time at the shelter. The activities that once seemed daunting now filled her with a sense of purpose and joy. One evening, after a fulfilling day of painting and volunteering, Abigail sat on her porch, reflecting on her journey. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, the setting sun casting a warm glow. She felt a deep sense of peace, a feeling that had eluded her for so long. Her thoughts turned to James, but the pain of his betrayal no longer consumed her. Instead, she felt a quiet strength, a resolve to continue moving forward. She had discovered new passions, made new friends, and found a community that supported and uplifted her. Abigail was no longer defined by her past, but by the vibrant, resilient woman she was becoming. As the stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, Abigail made a promise to herself. She would continue to explore, to grow, and to embrace the opportunities that life presented. The journey of self-discovery was ongoing, and she was ready to face it with an open heart and a courageous spirit. The future was hers to create, one step at a time. It was a crisp fall afternoon when Abigail found herself standing outside the cozy little cafe she had once frequented with James. She had avoided this place for months, the memories too painful to face. But today, something inside her had shifted. She felt a newfound strength, a readiness to confront the ghosts of her past. As she took a deep breath and stepped inside, the familiar aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries filled the air, bringing with it a flood of emotions. Abigail chose a table near the back, away from the bustling crowd. She needed a moment to gather her thoughts. Just as she was about to take her first sip of coffee, the bell above the door jingled. She looked up and saw them, James and Daisy, laughing and chatting as they entered the cafe. They hadn't noticed her yet, their attention solely on each other. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she remained calm. Abigail knew this moment would come eventually, and she was determined not to shy away from it. She watched as they found a table, James pulling out a chair for Daisy, his eyes filled with the same warmth he once had for her. It stung, but it also fueled her resolve. Gathering her courage, Abigail stood up and walked over to their table. The look of surprise on James's face when he saw her was almost satisfying. Daisy looked confused, glancing between them. "Abigail," James stammered, rising awkwardly. "I didn't expect to see you here." She nodded, keeping her voice steady. "James, Daisy." She acknowledged the young woman with a brief nod. "I think it's time we talked." James hesitated, then gestured for her to sit. "Of course. Please join us." Abigail sat down, her gaze steady. "I won't take up much of your time. I just need to understand why. After 50 years, why did you throw it all away?" James looked down, unable to meet her eyes. Daisy shifted uncomfortably, clearly not prepared for this confrontation. "Abigail, James began, but she held up a hand to stop him. "I've spent months trying to piece together what went wrong," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I've revisited every moment, every memory, and I realized that I wasn't the one who changed. You were." James looked up, pain and regret etched on his face. "I was unhappy, Abby. I felt like I was suffocating. I needed something new, something different." Abigail shook her head. "And you thought running away with a 19-year-old would solve your problems? Did you even think about what you were doing, or the damage you were causing?" Daisy finally spoke up, her voice small. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Abigail. We fell in love." Abigail turned to her, a mix of pity and frustration in her eyes. "Daisy, do you really understand what you've gotten yourself into? This isn't just about love. It's about commitment, responsibility, and the consequences of your actions." James reached out, his hand trembling. "Abby, I'm sorry. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I can't change what's happened." She pulled back, not ready for his touch. "I don't need your apologies, James. I need you to understand the gravity of what you've done. You didn't just break my heart. You shattered the life we built together." There was a long silence, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Abigail could see the remorse in James's eyes, but she also knew it wasn't enough to heal the wounds he had inflicted. "Abigail," Daisy said softly, "I know I can't replace what you had. I'm not trying to. But I love James, and I want to make him happy." Abigail studied the young woman, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "I hope you do, Daisy. I truly do. But remember this, relationships aren't built on fantasies. They require work, sacrifice, and a deep respect for each other's history and future." She stood up, feeling a sense of closure. "I found my own path now, and I'm moving forward. I just needed you both to understand the impact of your choices." James looked up at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I hope you find happiness, Abby. You deserve it more than anyone." Abigail nodded, a small, sad smile on her lips. "I will, James, and so will you if you learn from this." She turned and walked out of the cafe, the cool air hitting her face like a cleansing breeze. As she made her way down the street, Abigail felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had faced the pain head-on and emerged stronger for it. Her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next, knowing she had the strength to face it. James stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, the lines on his face seeming deeper than ever. The honeymoon phase with Daisy had ended faster than he'd anticipated, and reality was settling in. He turned off the tap and walked back into the bedroom, where Daisy sat on the bed scrolling through her phone, oblivious to his presence. "Morning," he said, forcing a smile. Daisy looked up, her face brightening momentarily. "Morning, James." But the warmth in her voice was fleeting, replaced by a distant coolness. She went back to her phone, and James felt a pang of loneliness. Their days together had become a series of small, silent battles. Daisy's youthful energy, once a source of excitement for him, now felt like a constant reminder of the generational gap between them. She wanted to go out every night, visit clubs and parties, while James longed for quiet evenings at home. One night, as they sat in their small apartment, Daisy turned to him with a look of frustration. "James, we never do anything fun anymore. All you want to do is stay in and watch TV." James sighed, setting his book aside.
Daisy, I'm tired.
"I've been working all day. Can't we just have a quiet night?" Her eyes flashed with irritation. "You're always tired. I didn't sign up for this. I want to live, to enjoy our time together." He rubbed his temples, feeling the tension build. "And I want to be with you, Daisy, but we have to find a balance. I can't keep up with your pace all the time." Their conversations often ended this way, with neither truly understanding the other's perspective. Daisy's friends had started to drift away, uncomfortable with the age difference and James's reserved nature. She missed the carefree days of her youth, and it showed in the way she interacted with him. One evening, James came home to find Daisy packing a bag. His heart skipped a beat. "What are you doing?" She didn't look up. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a few days. I need some space." "Space?" he echoed, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. "Daisy, we need to talk about this. Running away won't solve our problems." She zipped up the bag and finally met his gaze. "I'm not running away, James. I just need time to think. This isn't what I imagined." James felt a wave of panic. "What did you imagine, Daisy?" "That life would be one big party. Relationships take work. They're not all excitement and adventure." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I know that, but I didn't expect it to be this hard. I didn't expect to feel so alone." Her words cut deep, and James felt his own eyes stinging with unshed tears. "You're not alone, Daisy. I'm right here trying to make this work, but we have to do it together." She looked at him, her expression softening. "I just need some time, James. Please understand." He nodded, though his heart ached. "Take the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." As Daisy walked out the door, James sat down heavily on the couch. The apartment felt emptier than ever. He looked around at the life they were trying to build together and wondered if love alone was enough to bridge the gap between them. Over the next few days, James threw himself into his work, trying to distract himself from the gnawing emptiness. He thought about Abigail, about the life he had left behind. The stability and understanding they had shared now seemed like a distant dream. One night, while working late at the office, his phone buzzed with a message from Daisy. It was simple and to the point. "Can we talk?" James's heart raced as he replied, "Of course. When?" "Tomorrow after work. I'll come by the apartment." The next day dragged on interminably. When James finally arrived home, Daisy was already there, sitting on the couch. She looked different, more subdued, as if the past few days had weighed heavily on her. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," he replied, taking a seat opposite her. "You wanted to talk?" She nodded, taking a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us, about everything. I'm not sure if we're on the same page anymore." James felt a lump in his throat. "Daisy, I know things haven't been easy, but I believe we can find a way to make this work." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't know if love is enough, James. We're so different. Our lives, our needs, they're just not aligning." His heart ached as he listened. "What are you saying, Daisy? Are you giving up on us?" "I'm saying I don't want to resent you, and I don't want you to resent me. Maybe we rushed into this without thinking it through." James felt a profound sadness settle over him. "So what now?" Daisy looked at him with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "I think we need to take a step back, reevaluate what we really want. Maybe some time apart will help us see things more clearly." James nodded, though every fiber of his being wanted to fight against her words. "If that's what you need, Daisy, I'll support it. But know that I do love you, and I want to see us work through this. I love you too, James. But sometimes love isn't enough on its own. As Daisy packed her things and prepared to leave, James watched her, feeling a deep sense of loss. Their new marriage, filled with so much promise, was now a painful reminder of the complexities of love and the challenges that came with it. When she finally walked out the door, James sat alone in the quiet apartment, the reality of their situation sinking in. He had chased a dream, only to find that the path was far more difficult than he had ever imagined. Now, he faced the possibility of losing everything he had hoped to gain, forced to confront the hard truths about love, commitment, and the choices he had made. Abigail stood on the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping through her hair as she looked out over the vast expanse of the ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks below, a powerful reminder of nature's relentless force. She had come here to find solace, to gather her thoughts and draw strength from the untamed beauty of the sea. It had been months since James had left, and though the pain still lingered, she felt a new sense of resolve building within her. The journey of self-discovery and healing had been anything but easy. There were days when the weight of her heartbreak felt unbearable, when the memories of her life with James threatened to drown her in sorrow. But each time she stumbled, Abigail found a way to rise again, her determination growing stronger with each passing day. She had thrown herself into her passions, rediscovering the joy of painting, the thrill of hiking, and the peace of volunteering at the animal shelter. These activities had not only filled her days, but had also given her a renewed sense of purpose. Abigail was no longer just a woman who had been betrayed. She was an artist, an adventurer, and a caregiver. She was reclaiming her identity piece by piece. One afternoon, while working on a new painting, Abigail received a phone call from her daughter, Chloe. "Mom, there's an art exhibition coming up, and I think you should enter. Your work is amazing, and it deserves to be seen." Abigail hesitated. "I don't know, Chloe. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that." Chloe's voice was filled with encouragement. "You are ready, Mom. You've come so far, and this is a chance to show the world what you're capable of." With her daughter's words echoing in her mind, Abigail decided to take the plunge. She spent the next few weeks preparing her best pieces, pouring her heart and soul into each one. The process was cathartic, allowing her to channel her emotions into her art. When the day of the exhibition arrived, she felt a mix of nerves and excitement. The gallery was filled with people, their eyes scanning the artwork on the walls. Abigail stood near her paintings, watching as visitors stopped to admire her work. She overheard snippets of conversations, people praising the depth of emotion in her pieces, the vivid colors, and the intricate details. It was a validation she hadn't realized she needed. As the evening wore on, a man approached her, his eyes fixed on one of her paintings. "This piece is incredible," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "It's like I can feel the story behind it." Abigail smiled, a blush creeping into her cheeks. "Thank you. That means a lot to me." They struck up a conversation, and she learned that his name was Ethan, a fellow artist who had recently moved to the area. They talked about their inspirations, their struggles, and their dreams. For the first time in a long while, Abigail felt a genuine connection with someone new. In the following weeks, she and Ethan grew closer, spending time together exploring galleries, hiking trails, and sharing their love of art. He was kind, attentive, and understanding of her past. Abigail found herself opening up to him, sharing stories and feelings she had kept buried for so long. One evening, as they sat on the porch of her home, watching the sunset, Ethan turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You're an incredible woman, Abigail. You've been through so much, yet you've come out stronger. It's inspiring." She looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it alone. The support of my friends and family, and meeting someone like you, has made all the difference." Ethan took her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "You've got a remarkable strength within you, and I'm honored to be a part of your journey." As the days turned into months, Abigail's life continued to blossom. She embraced her new relationship with Ethan, allowing herself to feel happiness and love once more. Her art gained recognition, leading to more exhibitions and opportunities. She became a pillar of support for her friends and family, offering advice and comfort to those in need. Abigail's journey was far from over, but she faced each new challenge with a resilience she hadn't known she possessed. She had found strength in the face of adversity, transforming her pain into a source of empowerment. Her past no longer defined her. It had shaped her into the remarkable woman she had become. Standing on that cliff, with the ocean roaring beneath her, Abigail felt a profound sense of peace. She had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever the future held. With a final deep breath, she turned away from the edge and walked back towards her new life, each step filled with purpose and hope. Abigail never imagined she would find love again, especially after the heartbreak she had endured. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. It all began one crisp autumn morning when she decided to explore the local farmer's market. The air was filled with the scent of fresh produce, baked goods, and the vibrant chatter of vendors and shoppers. Abigail wandered through the stalls, admiring the colorful array of fruits and vegetables. As she reached for a bunch of sunflowers, her favorite, she felt someone else's hand brush against hers. She looked up to see a man about her age, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He was tall, with a rugged yet gentle demeanor that immediately put her at ease. "Looks like we both have good taste," he said, chuckling softly. Abigail smiled back. "Sunflowers have always been my favorite. They remind me of brighter days." "I couldn't agree more," he replied, handing her the bunch. "Please take them. My name's Sam, by the way." "Thank you, Sam. I'm Abigail," she said, accepting the flowers. "Nice to meet you." They struck up a conversation, discovering a shared love for gardening and a mutual appreciation for the simple joys in life. Sam owned a small organic farm on the outskirts of town and invited her to visit sometime. Abigail felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. She accepted his invitation, curious to learn more about this intriguing man. A week later, Abigail found herself driving out to Sam's farm. The landscape was breathtaking, with rolling fields and vibrant gardens. Sam greeted her with the same warm smile that had charmed her at the market. He gave her a tour, explaining his sustainable farming practices and the passion he poured into his work. Abigail was captivated by his dedication and the peacefulness of the farm. They spent the afternoon together, picking vegetables and sharing stories. Abigail felt a sense of ease and contentment in Sam's presence. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the fields, Sam suggested they have dinner. "I hope you like homemade pizza," he said, leading her to a cozy outdoor kitchen. "I make the dough from scratch and use ingredients from the farm." Abigail's heart warmed at the gesture. "That sounds wonderful." They cooked together, laughter and conversation flowing effortlessly. Felt like the beginning of something special. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened. Sam was patient and understanding, never pushing Abigail to move faster than she was comfortable with. He respected her past and the healing she was still going through. One evening, as they sat by the fire pit on his farm, Sam turned to her with a serious expression. "Abigail, I know you've been through a lot and I don't want to rush things, but I need you to know how much I care about you. You've brought so much light into my life." Tears welled up in Abigail's eyes, but this time, they were tears of joy. "Sam, you've done the same for me. I never thought I could feel this way again, but you've shown me that it's possible." He took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "Whatever the future holds, we'll face it together. No pressure, no rush, just us." As the months passed, Abigail and Sam's relationship blossomed. They supported each other's dreams and found joy in the simplest moments. Sam encouraged Abigail to pursue her art further, even helping her set up a small gallery in town. The gallery became a hub of creativity and community, and Abigail's confidence soared. Their love was not without challenges, but they faced them with honesty and compassion. Sam's farm demanded a lot of his time and energy, but Abigail admired his dedication and found ways to help. Together, They created a life filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, as they worked side by side in the garden, Sam paused and looked at Abigail with a tender expression. "I've been thinking, how would you feel about moving in here? We could combine our lives, our dreams, and make something beautiful together." Abigail's heart skipped a beat. She had grown to love the farm and the life they were building. "I'd love that, Sam. This place feels like home because you're here." They embraced, the future stretching out before them, filled with promise and possibility. Abigail had found a new love, one built on trust, respect, and a deep understanding of each other's hearts. She had discovered new opportunities, not just in her art, but in the shared life she was creating with Sam. Their journey was a testament to the power of resilience, the beauty of second chances, and the incredible strength that comes from opening your heart to love again. Abigail knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she and Sam would face them together, hand in hand, ready to embrace the future with hope and joy. James sat alone in his small apartment, the weight of his decisions pressing down on him like a physical burden. The once lively space now felt cold and empty, a stark contrast to the vibrant life he had imagined with Daisy. It had been weeks since she left to stay with a friend, seeking the space and clarity that their strained relationship desperately needed. He stared at the half-empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table, contemplating the choices that had led him here. The thrill of his impulsive decision to leave Abigail for Daisy had long since faded, replaced by a gnawing sense of regret. He took another sip, the burn of the alcohol doing little to numb the ache in his chest. His thoughts drifted back to the life he had abandoned. The quiet mornings with Abigail, the comfort of their routine, the unwavering support she had always given him. He had traded decades of stability and understanding for a fleeting sense of excitement, and now he was paying the price. James's phone buzzed on the table, a message from his daughter, Chloe. She had been reaching out more frequently, her concern evident in each text. He picked up the phone, staring at her words. "Dad, we need to talk. It's important." With a heavy sigh, he replied, "Okay, when?" "Tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'll come by your apartment." James knew he couldn't avoid the conversation any longer. Chloe had always been perceptive, and she had seen through his facade from the beginning. The thought of facing her filled him with dread, but he knew it was necessary. The next day, Chloe arrived promptly at 3 p.m. She hugged her father tightly, sensing the turmoil he was in. They sat down in the living room, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. "Dad," Chloe began softly, "I'm worried about you. You don't seem like yourself." James looked into his daughter's eyes, the concern and love there almost too much to bear. "I'm sorry, Chloe. I've made such a mess of everything." Tears welled up in Chloe's eyes. "We all make mistakes, Dad, but you need to take responsibility for yours. Have you thought about talking to Mom?" James nodded, his throat tight. "I have, but I don't even know where to start. I hurt her so much, and I don't know if she'll ever forgive me." Chloe reached out, taking his hand. "You owe it to her to try, and to yourself. You can't keep living like this, consumed by regret." That evening, after Chloe left, James sat down and began to write a letter to Abigail. The words came slowly at first, but as he poured out his heart, the floodgates opened. He wrote about his regrets, his shame, and his longing for the life they had built together. He apologized for the pain he had caused, acknowledging the depth of his betrayal. The next day, he mailed the letter, feeling a glimmer of hope mixed with fear. He didn't know if Abigail would respond, but he had taken the first step towards seeking her forgiveness. As the days passed, James threw himself into his work, trying to find a sense of normalcy. But the emptiness remained, a constant reminder of his fractured life. One evening, as he sat in his office, the phone rang. It was Peter, his closest friend and confidant. "James, we need to talk," Peter said, his tone serious. "Sure, Peter. What's going on?" James replied, trying to mask the anxiety in his voice. "I'm worried about you, man. You've been isolating yourself, and it's not healthy. How about we grab a drink and catch up?" James agreed, grateful for the distraction. They met at a local bar, the familiar environment providing a small measure of comfort. Peter listened as James recounted the past few months, his regrets and his struggles. "You've got to stop beating yourself up, James," Peter said gently. "What's done is done. The important thing is what you do next." James nodded, taking his friend's words to heart. "I know, Peter. I just don't know where to go from here." Peter smiled, a reassuring warmth in his eyes. "One step at a time, my friend. Start by reaching out to the people who care about you. Rebuild those relationships. And most importantly, forgive yourself." In the following weeks, James began to take small steps toward healing. He reached out to friends and family, slowly mending the bridges he had burned. He attended therapy, confronting the deeper issues that had led to his destructive choices. Each day was a struggle, but he was determined to find a way forward. One afternoon, as he sat in his therapist's office, his phone buzzed with a message from Abigail. His heart raced as he opened it, reading her words, "I received your letter. Let's meet and talk." James felt a rush of emotions: fear, hope, relief. He knew that the conversation with Abigail would be difficult, but it was a chance for closure, for healing, and perhaps even for forgiveness. When they met at a quiet cafe, James was struck by how much Abigail had changed. There was a strength and serenity about her that hadn't been there before. They sat down, and for the first time in months, they talked openly and honestly. "James," Abigail began, her voice calm but firm, "I appreciate your letter. It meant a lot to me. But forgiveness is a journey, and it's going to take time." James nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "I understand, Abigail. I'm so sorry for everything. I just want to make things right, even if it's only for our own peace." They talked for hours, airing out their grievances, their pain, and their hopes for the future. By the end of their conversation, there was no clear resolution, but there was a sense of closure. James knew that he had a long road ahead, but he was ready to walk it, one step at a time. As he left the cafe, the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. James looked up at the sky, the sun setting in brilliant hues of orange and pink. For the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. He had faced his crisis head-on and was beginning to find a way through the darkness. The journey of healing and redemption had begun, and he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The first flakes of snow began to fall as Abigail looked out the window, a serene smile spreading across her face. This Christmas was unlike any she had experienced before. Instead of the traditional family gathering at her old house, she had decided to host a more intimate celebration at Sam's farm. The past year had been a whirlwind of change and growth, and she wanted this holiday to reflect the new chapter in her life. The farmhouse was warm and inviting, decorated with a mixture of old and new ornaments that held special meaning. Abigail had spent the past few days carefully hanging garlands and twinkling lights, filling the rooms with a festive glow. The scent of pine and freshly baked cookies filled the air, evoking a sense of comfort and joy. Sam entered the living room, carrying a tray of hot cocoa. "Everything looks perfect, Abigail," he said, setting the tray down on the coffee table. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Are you ready for tonight?" She nodded, her heart swelling with happiness. "More than ready. I'm excited to share this with everyone." As the evening approached, guests began to arrive. Chloe and Michael were the first, their faces lighting up when they saw their mother. Chloe hugged her tightly. "Mom, this place looks amazing. You've really outdone yourself." Michael nodded in agreement. "Yeah, Mom. Feels like home." Abigail's friends from the book club and the painting class arrived next, their laughter and chatter filling the house. Each guest brought a dish, contributing to the festive feast that was spread out on the dining table. There was a sense of camaraderie and warmth, a reflection of the supportive community Abigail had built around her. As everyone gathered around the table, Abigail felt a deep sense of gratitude. This Christmas was about more than just traditions. It was about celebrating the people who had stood by her side through thick and thin. She raised her glass for a toast, her voice steady and heartfelt. "To new beginnings," she said, her eyes shining with emotion. This year has been one of immense change, but it's also been a year of incredible growth. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. You've all played a part in helping me rediscover myself and find happiness again. Here's to the journey ahead, and to the love and friendship that guide us. Everyone raised their glasses, echoing her sentiments. To new beginnings. After the meal, they gathered in the living room, where a crackling fire added to the cozy atmosphere. Chloe and Michael presented Abigail with a special gift, a scrapbook filled with memories of their time together, old and new. Abigail's eyes welled up with tears as she flipped through the pages, each photo a testament to the love and resilience that had carried them through. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling her children into a hug. "This means the world to me." Later, as the evening wound down, Abigail found herself sitting by the fire, a cup of cocoa in hand. Sam joined her, his presence a comforting anchor. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice soft. "Happy," she replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. "This is the best Christmas I could have hoped for." Sam kissed the top of her head. "You deserve every bit of it, Abigail. You've come so far." They sat in companionable silence, watching the flames dance. The room was filled with the sounds of laughter and music, a backdrop to the peace that settled over Abigail's heart. She thought about the past year, the pain, the healing, the discoveries, and the love that had blossomed anew. It had been a journey of transformation, one that had led her to this moment of contentment and joy. As she looked around the room at the faces of those she loved, Abigail felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This Christmas was different, but it was also perfect in its own way. It was a celebration of resilience, of the bonds that had been strengthened, and of the new paths that lay ahead. Abigail knew that whatever the future held, she was ready to embrace it with an open heart and a courageous spirit. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in a pristine white. Inside, the warmth of the fire and the love of her family and friends made Abigail feel truly at home. She had found her place, her peace, and her strength. And in that moment, she knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter in her life. The New Year's Eve party at Abigail and Sam's farmhouse was in full swing. Friends and family filled the house, their laughter and chatter creating a warm, joyful atmosphere. The past year had been a tumultuous journey for everyone, and tonight was a celebration of resilience, growth, and new beginnings. Abigail moved through the crowd, greeting guests and ensuring everyone felt welcome. She paused by the window, looking out at the snow-covered fields bathed in moonlight. The past year flashed through her mind, the heartbreak, the healing, and the incredible journey of self-discovery. She had come so far, and she felt ready to embrace whatever the future held. Chloe and Michael were mingling with the guests, their faces glowing with happiness. They had watched their mother transform from a woman shattered by betrayal to one who radiated strength and joy. Chloe caught Abigail's eye and smiled, a silent acknowledgement of how far they had all come. In a quiet corner of the room, James stood with a glass of champagne in hand. He had accepted the invitation to join the celebration, hoping it would be a step towards reconciliation and peace. Abigail had welcomed him warmly, her forgiveness a balm to his wounded soul. He watched her now, moving gracefully among the guests, her smile genuine and bright. He felt a pang of regret, but also a sense of gratitude for the opportunity to make amends. Sam walked up to Abigail, slipping an arm around her waist. "You're glowing tonight," he whispered, his eyes filled with admiration. Abigail leaned into him, her heart full. "I'm just so happy, Sam. This year has been incredible, and I'm so grateful for everything." He kissed her temple. "You've made it incredible, Abigail. Your strength and love have touched everyone here." As midnight approached, the guests gathered in the living room for the countdown. Abigail stood at the front, holding a glass of champagne. She looked around at the faces of those she loved, feeling an overwhelming sense of community and connection. "Before we ring in the new year," she began, her voice carrying warmth and sincerity, "I want to say a few words. This past year has been one of the most challenging and transformative of my life. I faced heartache and pain, but I've also discovered incredible strength and joy. Each of you has played a part in my journey, and I'm deeply grateful for your love and support." She paused, her eyes meeting James's across the room. "We've all faced our own battles and made our own journeys. Tonight, we celebrate not just the end of a year, but the beginning of a new chapter for all of us. Here's to forgiveness, to love, and to the new opportunities that await us." Everyone raised their glasses, echoing her words. To new beginnings. The countdown began, and as the clock struck midnight, the room erupted in cheers and laughter. Abigail kissed Sam, feeling a surge of happiness and hope. Around her, friends and family embraced, sharing in the joy of the moment. James approached her, his expression tentative but hopeful. "Happy New Year, Abigail." She smiled warmly. "Happy New Year, James. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for inviting me," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I know it's been a difficult journey, but I'm committed to making things right." Abigail nodded. "We all have our paths to walk, James. The important thing is that we're moving forward." As the party continued, Abigail felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had found love again, built a new community, and rediscovered her passion for life. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities. Later that night, as the guests began to leave, Abigail and Sam stood on the porch, watching the snow fall gently around them. The farmhouse was quiet now, the warmth of the evening lingering in the air. "This has been a perfect night," Abigail said, leaning against Sam. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "It really has, and it's just the beginning, Abigail. We have so much to look forward to." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with love and determination. "Yes, we do. Together." They stood there for a long moment, savoring the tranquility and the promise of the new year. Abigail knew that the journey ahead would have its challenges, but she felt ready to face them with courage and hope. She had found her strength, her community, and her love, and with them by her side, she knew she could conquer anything. As the first light of dawn began to break, Abigail and Sam walked back into the farmhouse, hand in hand. The past year had been a testament to the power of resilience and the beauty of new beginnings. And as they stepped into the future together, they did so with hearts full of hope and the unwavering belief that the best was yet to come. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel now. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Leave a like if you liked it.